So we're gonna get started talking about the boundary stela of the Amarna area and of Akhenaten. So anyway, it's been a while since we did our thing talking about Akhenaten and the Amarna period, but I will give everyone a recap just in case you have not been. What was attached to the figure? The hair? The hair apparently was, yes, in the head. The other beads. But I'm not sure what else you're saying. What was attached to the figure. So the Amarna period, if nobody knows what it is a period of ancient Egyptian history in the middle of the New Kingdom, where the son of Amenhotep III, otherwise known as Amenhotep IV, and then changed his name to Akhenaten, changes everything, decides to go to a more monotheistic society, worshipping only something called the Aten, which essentially is the sun, but not nearly as like Ra is the sun as just Aten is the sun. And he also moved the entire court and main temple system and palace to a spot in the middle of Egypt that was very empty. And he built a whole new city, and it was really only settled for about 14 years, a little bit more sometimes said. And so we've been talking about the Amarna period in a lot of different ways, looking at texts that have been found from the Amarna period, looking at the bust of Nefertiti and the sculptors' models. And now we're going to talk about the boundary stela, which are large. Stela is essentially just a large stone that is inscribed. And so we're going to talk about the boundary stela that surround and almost are essentially a giant fence for Akhenaten, which is Amarna. So, as you can see, here we have the Nile River, and this area of Egypt, we're kind of dead center in the middle of like modern day Egypt. As you can see, like this area on the east side is topographically very, very hilly, very mountainous, and comes right up to the Nile in some portions, while the other side has a very large floodplain and then becomes more mountainous in this area, like on the very, very western side. If you have never heard this word before, we call this wadis. So as you can see here, you can see some of them very easily via this, is that a wadi is an ancient riverbed that was carved essentially out into the stone by the water erosion, but has now since dried up. So technically the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens, those are wadis. And so the wadis of Egypt, depending on where you are in the Nile Valley floodplain, they are either very close to the Nile or they are very far away from the Nile. And so this one comes right up here. So it makes this beautiful little cove, with this kind of tall mountain, not even mountain, cliff side on this side, and then the river in the middle. And this is the parts of Tel Amarna that have been uncovered. It probably did go closer to the river, but that is where modern settlement is. The workman's village is out in this area, which we'll talk about. And then the Maru Aten, which is down here. Hopefully, if we have time to talk about that today, we'll talk about that. But today we're going to talk about we're first going to talk about is the boundary stela. So these boundary stela you can see are all labeled, and there are two really, really far out. There's actually another one that you can't see. I don't know why you can't see it. My God. There's an A, if you can see that. This is what we're just gonna do. There you go. Now you can see it. So there are three that are way out on this far western side of Amarna. And then most of them, there are quite a few clustered down here in this wadi as well as over here. And then there are a couple. But as you can see, it kind of makes this big circle that these are essentially intended to be like I don't want to say a welcome sign, but it sort of is a welcome sign. It's like if you're living in the United States or you're living in a different country and you cross a state border or country border and it says, welcome to Nevada. That's what this is. But it includes much more text and includes much more imagery. And it also, the text is really important because it explains a lot of why Akhenaten supposedly did all of this in general. And we're going to read some of them. So you can see this. Sacred territory of Akhenaten, which is the city. Remember, I'm going to say Akhenaten for the name of the man and Akhenaten for the place. Is an arc of the desert on the east of the Nile, bounded by tall cliffs and broad tract of architectural land with villages across the river on the west and a narrow strip of western desert in front of the low and escarpment. And it was marked out by a series of tablets or stelae carved into the cliffs and escarpment on both sides. In modern times, they have become known as the Amarna boundary stela. Each one is a rectangle with a rounded top sculpted from the actual rock. The main rectangular part was carved with many horizontal lines of hieroglyphic text. The picture of the royal family worshipping the Aten filled in the rounded top panel. Most of the stelae were accompanied by statues of Akhenaten and Nefertiti and some of their daughters, which were also carved from the rock. So we're going to look up better pictures of these because for some reason the Amarna project's pictures are very, very blurry. But you can see two statues right here, one of Akhenaten and one of Nefertiti, and two of their daughters. This whole square here in the middle is the hieroglyphic text, and then you have the Aten sun here at the top, and you have Akhenaten and Nefertiti worshipping the sun up there at the top. And here is a different version with Akhenaten, Nefertiti on either side, and then two of their daughters on either side. Yes, they were. As you can see, these, a lot of them were, and some of them have not been, but a lot of them, you can see here, some of them were preserved by essentially a miracle of the sand. But yes, some of these were defaced, and we're going to talk about that. The stelae were methodically sought out and noted in the 1891 and 1892 by the archaeologist W. Flinders Petrie. He designated each by means of an English capital letter, leaving gaps in the sequence to allow for further discoveries because Petrie is smart and things like that. So his sequence ran ABF for the West Bank and JKLMNPQRSUV for the East Bank. Stela X was added to the list by Nina/Norman Daguerre Davis in 1901, and H was added by H. Fenwick in 2006, which you can see here. So obviously this one was kind of protected essentially by the sand. So it says Stela H with the remains of the statue, the original carved surface of panel and statue do not survive. So some of it did not survive, but that's crazy though. 2006, that's so recent in comparison. So the main text on each stela contains one or other of two proclamations made by Akhenaten, the first in his 5th year of his reign and the second in his 6th year of his reign, with added reaffirmation in his 8th year. So then the first proclamation is found on stela K, M, and X, and the second is found on stela A, B, and F. All three on the west side. So the west side, you can tell that he is not adding those on the west side of the map until his 8th year of his reign. Along with J, N, P, Q, R, S, U, and V. So he only made 3 in the 6th year of his, the 5th year of his reign, and then he made a ton of others the next year, along with adding a reaffirmation in his 8th year. Stela A is a small rectangular tablet besides Stela M without pictures or statues. It seems to give an abbreviated version of one of the proclamations. And Stela H with a statue group was carved into a rock so poorly that any hieroglyphic text is likely to have been cut into an added layer of gypsum plaster. So that's why this one hasn't survived, is that the stone was really poor and they probably plastered it and then carved it into it, and that's why it didn't unfortunately survive. It was also intended that they would be visited, for broad paths made of clearing stones to each side ran up to several of them. So these are meant to be visited potentially by the people of the city or by others who are coming to visit the city. Here you can see some more images. So all their heads are missing, but otherwise their statues look pretty okay. And the plan of like the stela. This is stela A. You can see that there's a path that led to this, and you can still see it. Apparently in 1975 you could still see the ancient path that led down to it. So this does have all the text. Here's stela R. Or what's left of it. Yeah. Figures of Akhenaten and Nefertiti on the left side of the stela have been destroyed by thieves attempting to cut them out as a single block in order to sell them. Of course. We're going to go back to reading the text, and I'll finish what this says, and then we'll scroll back up. So the stela and their accompanying statues have suffered various degrees of natural erosion and human damage, some of it quite recent. Davis noted in his 1908 publication, Stela P was blown to pieces by gunpowder a few years ago by Copts, who expected, as all Egyptians do, to find that the stela was a door to a hidden treasure chamber. The best preserved in his day was Stela S, which he remarked as, sculptors chanced on a vein of limestone as hard as alabaster, so that the greater part of the monument is marvelously preserved, though spiteful attacks have been made upon it lately. Most subsequent attacks of the stela involve cutting deep and wide grooves across them to assist in the removal of irregular slabs, which then could be sold to collectors and museums. Thus, pieces of stela R were bought in the 1940s by the Louvre in Paris. In 1984, a photograph of stela S shows the face of this most admired stela ravaged by this way. Early in 2004, however, the earlier manner of destruction was returned to, and the entire stela and its statues were blown out of the hillside with quarry explosives. 2004, guys. And this, like, I know you guys know this because I talk about this more, but this people think that looters don't exist anymore, and it, like, literally annoys the shit out of me because they do. They very, very much do. The amount of people that don't respect archaeological sites, don't respect ancient cultures. And this goes with America too, and Native Americans and people stealing arrowheads and mounds and digging into mounds, and it is still going on, and I think people just like ignore it and they don't think that it's really a crisis that has to happen. But I did hear about that. But it says, many of the pieces were subsequently collected by the local inspectorate of the Supreme Council of Antiquities with the view of restoring it. And I will say, this place, again, is in the middle of nowhere. There is no major tourism to this site. There is no major, like, these are just regular old Egyptians who, like, don't have the access and in some cases, the understanding of having a lot of history around them and a lot of tourists coming to see the history. And so it's very different. This area is very, very different than Cairo, than Thebes, where the economic culture of that area is based on tourism. In that area, it is not. Nobody goes there. And I desperately would love to go here, but it is so harder to get there than other places. So here's Stela S. Here's one of the best ones. Okay, oh my god, look at this. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to really see this picture, but this is Stela S in 1984. Wait, so this is what it looked like prior to 1984. Although you can still see, this is people trying to cut it. But then look at this. God, look how awful that looks. They're trying to carve little sections. Oh my god, that's horrible. That's so bad. So that's where Stela S is. But so that's where it was. So this is now what it looks like in 2004. My god. 1908, 1984, and now it is a giant hole in the ground. For most visitors, most of the stela are difficult to go to. The most accessible one that is worth seeing is Stela U, occupying part of the cliff face and a little bay to the north of the entrance of the Royal Wadi. At the base on both sides are the remains of groups of carved statues of the royal family. Stela U can be reached by an extension to the asphalt road which runs south from the north tombs and continues to the royal tomb. Visitors of the site of Tuna El Gabel across the river also pass very close to a well-preserved stela in the remains of statues A. So there's Stela U, which this is the one I remember learning about because it's really, really high up. Sometimes you can't see it. Alright, so now let's go and read some of this. There's a couple different versions. I was gonna say, I think this is a slightly better picture. Here's Stela U. So you can see the 4 statues. But this one, I remember you have to look very high up on. Here's that Stela S. When it was severely damaged. Any other pictures? So this, surprisingly, is a section of a stela. I don't know if we know what number this is, but oh, it's Boundary Stela S. This is Boundary Stela S. This is in the MFA in Boston. Wow. But even then, do you see how their faces are already defaced? Even before that. This, see, like, this here and the faces are probably ancient destruction, while the actual, like, separating of that is probably modern destruction. So from El Amarna, about 1932, removed from the stela at El Amarna, sold to Maurice Naumann in Cairo, then sold to Jacob Hirsch, then to the Galerie Arts Classe in Lucerne, then to Burma's Gallery in New York, Ernest Brumer, New York, Jacob Hirsch. Wow, this is only sold to the MFA in 1992. It's crazy. Oh, but it is on display right now at the Houston Museum of Natural Science until 2027. What if people don't like the microeconomics having to do with family lineage? Like there's... Sorry, Frankie, these questions are not as relevant to what we're talking about. I don't really understand... I don't really understand your question, and it's not really having to do with, we don't really, unless we're talking about like other, like we don't talk about religion in here, so, unless it's ancient Egyptian religion. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here. This is UCL's website, which is so old and horrible, but I think we'll just read it here. So, the texts of both proclamations are long, repetitive, and also damaged and partially untranslatable as a result, especially towards the end. In the first proclamation, Akhenaten sets out his intentions. It is dated to his regnal year 5, 4th month of winter, day 13. On this day, when one was in Akhetaten, his majesty appeared on the great chariot of Electrum, setting off on the good road toward Akhetaten, his place of creation, which he made for himself that he might set within it every day. There was presented a great offering to the father, the Aten, consisting of bread, beer, long and short-horned cattle, calves, fowl, wine, fruits, incense, and all kinds of fresh green plants, everything good, in front of the mountain of Akhetaten. The king addresses his gathered courtiers. As the Aten is beheld, the Aten desires that there be made for him, as a monument with an eternal and everlasting name. Now it is the Aten, my father, who advised me and concerning it, namely Akhetaten. No official has ever advised me concerning it. Not any of the people who are in the entire land has ever advised me concerning it to suggest making Akhenaten in this distinct place. It was the Aten, my father, who advised me concerning it, so that it might be made for him as Akhenaten. Behold, it is Pharaoh who has discovered it, not being the property of a god, not being the property of a goddess, not being the property of a ruler, not being the property of a female ruler, not being the property of any people to lay claim to it. I shall make Akhenaten for the Aten, my father, in this place. I shall not make Akhenaten for him in the south of it, to the north of it, to the west of it, to the east of it. I shall not expand beyond the southern stela of Akhenaten toward the south, nor shall I expand beyond the northern stela of Akhenaten toward the north, in order to make Akhenaten for him there. Nor shall I make it for him on the western side of Akhenaten, but I shall make Akhenaten for the Aten, my father, on the east of the Akhenaten, the place which him himself made to be enclosed for him by the mountain. I shall make the house of the Aten, quick quotes there, my father, which is essentially, house of the Aten is like the temple. My father in Akhenaten in this place. I shall make the mansion of the Aten for the Aten, my father in Akhenaten in this place. I shall make the sun temple of the great king's wife, Nefer, Efer, Uaten, Nefertiti, for the Aten, my father in Akhenaten in his place. I shall make the houses of rejoicing for the Aten, my father, in the island of the Aten, distinguished in jubilees in Akhenaten in this place. I shall make myself the apartments in the Pharaoh. I shall make the apartments of the great king's wife in Akhenaten in this place. To summarize so far, because it's going to continue to repeat. At the very basis, he is saying that essentially the Aten has told him where he had to build this holy city. It's very much putting Akhenaten in this prophet scenario, in which he is the only one who can talk to the Aten, and that then he is translating what the Aten is telling him so that he can do the Aten's bidding. But this might sound a little crazy, but like in general, the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, a lot of them identified with being the son of Ra and being directly like the middleman between the gods. So this is not different whatsoever, but it is different in the sense that this is the only god that he talks about, that he doesn't really talk about any other gods, and that essentially what he is doing is he is cutting out the priesthood. And that is like some of the big theories as to why Akhenaten made this crazy switch. Doing a little bit of psychoanalyzing on him, he was not the first son. He was the second son, and he was a priest. He had joined the priesthood. He was a priest in one of the temples, probably to Amun, probably. And then his brother dies, and he has to rise to the throne. And doing some psychoanalyzing of somebody who was in the priesthood at the time, he essentially turns his entire back on everything that he had been learning up until that point, which could indicate a couple different things. For one, we do know that during the New Kingdom, the priesthood was extremely powerful and was getting more and more powerful, and potentially more powerful than the actual pharaoh. So he could have witnessed this and been like, nah, man, that's not okay. He could have witnessed corruption within the priesthood. He could have witnessed all of these different things that essentially, when he now has that power, he says, boys, we're not doing this anymore. And he essentially ousts everybody, and he becomes the only priest, pretty much. Like, there were definitely other, like, lower life priests, but there was not probably a high priest. He is the high priest. He is this middleman. He is the only one who can talk to the god to tell what needs to be done. And so in my mind, a lot of the stuff that he does make sense. Like, it makes sense to me that you were so frustrated with how life is working at that moment, and then suddenly you get a little bit of power where, exactly, that all these parts where he's saying, nobody advised me, I made this decision because the god told me. That very much, this is very, very much, where was it? I love this part where it's like, not being the property of a god, not being the property of a goddess, not being the property of a ruler, not being the property of a female ruler. Like, he is just throwing out all of these, like, potential, like, disses at people who have wronged him in a very, like, no one has ever advised me of concerning it. Not any of the people who are in the entire land have ever advised me to suggest making Akhenaten in this distant place. It was the Aten. It was the Aten who has done this to me, who has told me this, and I must do it. It's very much like prophesizing and putting himself in this very interesting place. And while a lot of these texts, I think people in general, you can assume all of this is usually propaganda. Like I hate to say it, it's true. Like, if a pharaoh is writing something, like, I hate to say it, there's some sort of agenda that he's trying to push. But there's something about this that, yes, it is pushing the agenda, but almost in a way where it's like he's trying to convince us that he is doing the right thing. Which sounds weird to say, but it's like, it's not that he's trying to convince us to do anything. He's just trying to convince us, the audience, that what he did is okay. Because he did it, because somebody else told him to do it. It's a very different type of propaganda in a way, because I think this is very honest in comparison. Like, yes, it's covering up a lot of other stuff, but like, I'm doing the right thing. Aachen said me so. Like, that's the thing, is that, like, versus the propaganda of, like, I am the most powerful being in the world. I am the best, da 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 da. This is like, I know what I'm doing. Just trust me. And I think it's so funny the way that works in this case. No, this is never a democracy. Egypt was never anywhere close to being a democracy. No, Egypt is a empire, is a kingdom. There's always one ruler. This is not being a democracy, but this guy is changing it so much. It's literally essentially, this is gonna be a very strange comparison, but like in America, we have the 3 different branches. We have the judicial, executive, and oh shit. We have the court, we have the president, and we have Congress and Senate. All 3 of those. This would be like if the president was just like, yeah, no, we don't need the judges and we don't need Senate. Somebody told me what I need to do, and I'm just gonna do it by myself, and we're just gonna move the capital. Like, he just took it upon himself to just like change everything. Yeah, it's very odd, but unfortunately, this is making me like him more in a lot of ways, which is so kind of different and weird. I just feel like he's much more honest. And that's why I also like the art, because I truly do think he semi-looked like that. Because I think he's just trying to be more honest, and I kind of like it. And I could be completely wrong, but that's just the vibe I get. Alright, where was I? Let a tomb be made for me in the eastern mountain of Akhetaten. Let my burial be made in it in the millions of jubilees which the Aten my father has decreed for me. Let the burial of the great king's wife Nefertiti be made in it in the millions of years in which the Aten my father decreed it. Let the burial of the king's daughter Merit Aten be made in it in these millions and millions of years. If I die in any town downstream, to the south, to the west, to the east in these millions of years, let me be brought back, that I may be buried in Akhetaten. If the great queen's wife Nefertiti dies in any town downstream, to the south, to the west, to the east of these millions of years, let her be brought back, that she may be buried in Akhetaten. If the king's daughters Merit Aten die in any town downstream, to the south, to the west, to the east in the millions of the years, let her be brought back, so she may be buried in Akhetaten. Let a cemetery for the Menevus bull be made in the eastern mountain of the Akhetaten, that he may be buried in it. Let the tombs of the chiefs of the seers of the gods fathers of the Aten be made in the eastern mountain of Akhetaten, that they may be buried in it. Let the tombs of the priests of the Aten be made in the eastern mountain of Akhenaten, that they may be buried in it. So he has some sort of priests, but you can see he doesn't have like the chief of seers. that's not the same thing as like the high priest of Aten. Like he is the high priest. Like there's not really anybody else that's super gonna be high. And yeah, and that's the entirety of it. Could they date the order of the creation of each cell down to the year? To the exact year? Yeah, sort of. So, well, sort of. What we know is that it is dated to his regnal year 5, the 4th month of winter, day 13. So we actually know the technical specific date. So if we can figure out the first year of his reign, we could figure out the exact same date of when he dedicated it or wrote it. It kind of just depends. So the second proclamation was mainly concerning with fixing even more securely the limits of Akhenaten and with dedicating all of the enclosed land to the Aten. The stela has sometimes been mistakenly interpreted as saying that Akhenaten himself himself intended never to leave Akhenaten, whereas the injunction is against the extending the limits of the territory. The stated arrangements for his burial show that he envisaged traveling outside of it. I'm wondering if this one has it. So this is the University College London's website. So yeah, so we think he reigned about 1351 to 1334. 1351 minus 1334. So yeah, he ruled about 17 years, but he did for a couple years rule as Amenhotep IV. So the 14 years is around the time of occupation in Amarna before he passed away, with a couple years at the beginning for before he made this big change. So he did not immediately, like, it's not like he immediately came to the throne and was like, we're changing it all up, dudes. He waited a little bit. And that could have been because maybe he then was getting the perspective of when he was in the actual priesthood and watching how that all worked, and then when he was actually on the throne and watching how that all worked as well. So, yeah, they're in late Egyptian. Okay. So here's that two groups with the two different sections. So here's also the transliteration of it. So this says, Regnal year 6, month 4 of winter, day 13. Young God, content with what is right, Lord of the sky, Lord of the earth, sun disk, alive, great, illuminating the two riverbanks, alive, my father, the living Re Herakti, which is so weird. See, this proves to me that, like, everything saying that he only worshipped one God is bullshit, is that he glorified one God. But I still think he sort of acknowledged that the other gods, like, did exist or something. Oh, absolutely, Ninja. Yeah, in Egypt, they were absolutely the first bureaucrats. For sure. Thank you for contributing to the movie night. I think there are 12 more days on the movie night, so we got about 2 more weeks and such. But, like, he's actually acknowledging both Re Herakti and Shu, who are 2 different gods, in this text. And it's like, people think that, like, he literally forgot about all the other gods, and it's not true. It's not true. He just glorified one of them, pretty much. In his name as Shu, which is in the sun disk, given life forever and eternity, sun disk alive, great, who is in the said festival, and miss the domain of the sun disk and Akhenaten, the living Horus, strong bull, beloved of the sun disk, he of the 2 goddesses, great in kingship of Akhenaten, Horus of gold, who raised the name of the sun disk, dual king, who lives on what is right, lord of the 2 lands, Nefer Ahek Heperu Ra, soul one of Ra, son of Ra, who lives in what is right, lord of sunrisings, Akhenaten, great in his lifespan, given life forever and eternity. Young God, soul one of Ra, whose beauty the sun disk created, truly effective in heart for the God who made him, he who makes him content with what pleases him, he who does what is useful for him, oh God, he who does what is useful for the one who bore him, he who directs the land for the one who placed him on the throne, he who provisions his personal estate with millions and hundreds, thousands of offerings, he who raises the sun disk and magnifies his name, he who causes the earth to be for its maker, dual king who lives on what is right. I guess this is just talking about Akhenaten. I'm gonna skip this. But also, that he includes Nefertiti in a lot of this is also very telling. She is not required. I hate to say it, it is not required to name your great royal wife in things like this. Like, these are essentially governmental, like, texts. It is not a necessary. Akhenaten, I really, truly think, loved Nefertiti. I really, truly think he did. Because there's so much of her everywhere, and I really think he trusted her and listened to her, and she is included so much when a lot of royal wives are not. And we're going to talk about this a little bit. I hope we have time to maybe talk about some of the tombs in Amarna, but I find this hysterical, that people think that Nefertiti's tomb is in the Valley of the Kings, and her tomb is absolute. Like, if we're gonna say this, if she actually has a tomb, and if she is actually still buried in that tomb, and it is a preserved tomb, it's not in the Valley of the Kings. It's in Amarna. Because here's the thing. Nefertiti is not King Tut's mom. He has absolutely no reasoning why he should bring his mom or his... So he supposedly did bring Akhenaten to the Valley of the Kings. But we do know Akhenaten had a tomb in Amarna. But we believe that we have the body of Akhenaten. We're not 100% sure. People argue that it's not, but we believe we have a lot of his things. And so it appears that Tutankhamun brought his father with him to be buried in the Valley of the Kings. I hate to say it, he's got no obligation to bring Nefertiti. Nefertiti's not his mom. And Nefertiti died shortly after Akhenaten. He doesn't have any obligation to do so. And people would think, oh, Nefertiti was brought along with it. I think she's still in. I think she's still in Amarna, and nobody goes to that site anymore. And I'm like, I don't know why people think that it's there, and I don't think it's there. It's a bomb drop. So this king visits the city. Let's see. Okay, this is what I was looking for. Okay, so this is the part I remember. This is literally like the quote-unquote prophecy part of this. On this day, one was in Akhetaten in the Mat tent. Made by his presence, may he live, prosper, and be well in Akhetaten. Called the sun disk is content. Sunrise by his presence, may he live, prosper, be well, on horse, on the great chariot of fine gold, and the sun disk. Wait, no, we did read this. It's just slightly translated differently. Yes, we did read this. Yeah, so this is the whole part where he is like, he goes there and he's like, oh my God, this is the place. This is great. This is so weird. That is translated so differently. I'm wondering. I wish I could find a better translation of this, but... Oh, I love this. The southern stela, which is on the eastern mountain of Akhetaten, it is the stela of Akhetaten that I have made to stand in its position. I will never exceed it southward forever in eternity, in the southwest stela being made facing it in the southern mountain of the Like, it literally knows exactly where it is, which is hysterical. And it tells you where it is. This is the middle one, this is the northeast one. Oh, and look at this. Now for Akhenaten, from the southern stela to the northern stela, measuring the distance stela to stela at the eastern mound of Akhenaten, making 6 river lengths, 1 1/4 fractions and 4 cubits, and likewise from the southwest stela of Akhenaten to the northwest stela to the western mound of Akhenaten, making 6 river lengths, 1 1/4 fraction and 4 cubits. It literally gives the exact distance between the two of them. Isn't that crazy? Oh, and then this is always sad. I will not break this oath that I have made for the sun disk my father forever and eternity. It is now established on a stela of stone in the southeastern boundary, likewise on the northwestern boundary of Akhenaten, and established likewise on a stela of stone in the southwestern boundary, likewise on the western boundary of Akhenaten. It is not to be hacked out. It is not to be washed away. It is not to be defaced. It is not to be plastered over. It is not to be made to vanish. If it fades, if it crumbles, if the stela bears, it falls down, I will restore it back again in this place where it is. Which is really sad. That's a very good question that I don't know the answer to, Vaha. River length? Yeah, no idea. It's whatever size it was at that time, which is so hard. So this is the one that from his 8th year. Well, we do know what a cubit. A cubit is supposed to be from the tip of your finger to your elbow. Is 1 cubit, but it does change. I believe in Egypt it's supposed to be tip of your finger to your elbow, but cubit has a couple different definitions. It's got a very interesting Wikipedia page, but yeah, isn't that so interesting? Like, I hate to say it, paranoid. He was a little paranoid that like something was going to happen to it, and he puts it in there, and you can see here that he comes in on the 8th year. So 2 years after he did a couple of them, and he literally is like, I have come and visited this and inspected it. Like he writes that he's inspected it. Hello, Dapper. I don't know. That's a great question, Dapper. This is very interesting. So I think I'm gonna go quickly to the Wikipedia and see if there's anything else. Here is a better picture of Stela U. According to Barry Kemp's, R.I.P. Barry Kemp, Pharaoh Akhenaten did not conceive of Akhenaten as a city, but as a tract of sacred land, which makes a lot of sense when you read the text. Oh, George Glidden. I've talked about George Glidden before. So this is all about the other ones. Yeah, an additional stela was discovered by the Archaeological Survey of the Egypt Exploration Society in 2005-2006. Let me see this. I just want to say, I have an image carved on top of the text showing Akhenaten and Nefertiti worshipping Aten with their daughter Merit Aten. Their second daughter, Meket Aten, was later added to the picture in Stela K, which is taken to signal that her birth must have taken place sometime after the year 5 of Akhenaten's reign, in which the earlier proclamation is dated. Another unnamed figure was also later added to Stela K, while Stela X, probably also the damaged Stela M, included only Meket Aten and her parents. The text in the earlier proclamation only mentions Meket Aten and not her younger sisters. The stela has added... Why did it say Meket Aten? It should say Merit Aten. Merit Aten is the oldest daughter. Yeah, it should say Merit Aten, not Meket Aten. The third daughter is added to Stela A, B, P, Q, and U. So that Only Merit-Aten had already been born by year 5, with her younger sister Mekhet-Aten most likely born during year 5 or 6, and the third princess Ankh-Sen-Pa-Aten, also known as Ankh-Sen-Amun, right? Ankh-Sen-Amun, yeah. But her birth name was Ankh-Sen-Pa-Aten. She is born towards year 6, the earliest, but most likely sometime in year 7 or 8, before completion of the later stela. Due to the fragmented part of the earlier proclamation making a mention of some unsavory things the pharaoh has heard at Thebes, a theory that posits a clash with the priesthood of Amun of Thebes has been put forward by scholars. Berrykamp argues that the full expression of the beliefs of Akhenaten demanded the creation of a physical sacred landscape, and that the boundary stela are the most extensive personal testimony we have as to what was in his mind. R.I.P. Barry Kemp, man. Literally the exact same thing I was thinking. Like, it's a personal testimony. Like, oh, God. So at least 9 of the stela have been damaged by thieves, and 1, Stela F, has disappeared altogether. 2 other stelas P and Q have also been virtually destroyed. Well, let's see. This one is the one that said the... No, because let's look at the actual... Oh, God. See, this is the problem. I can't read it if I don't know what... It doesn't even have the numbers there. Oh, no, here's the numbers. The problem is this is the late Egyptian, and I can't read late Egyptian. So it would be... Zet. Right? Isn't that how it's translated? Zet, which would be Het. Let me see. That's somewhere on... Where'd the map go? So you can see... It's about 19.2 kilometers from X to A and 20 kilometers, that's pretty far. The area is a little bit smaller than that in comparison. Why didn't my dictionary open up? Always. It should always open in Adobe because it's a PDF. This is Middle Egyptian, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to find it, but let me see if I can find river. The X means that it's actually an H letter, an H word. Oh wait, that was it. Maybe. No, hets, not hots. I think it means... Where's T? Where's T? After S is T? Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately in Middle Egyptian, het is becoming entangled of hair, which is a great word that I now need to know. But it doesn't look like... I wonder if there's like... Unfortunately, I don't know late Egyptian. Yeah, it's obviously not a word in Middle Egyptian. Yeah, it's whatever they considered it at the time. I wonder if I could, let me just Google it real quick. Ancient Egyptian measurements. Wondering if this says. Ah, river measure. A league. It's like a league. I wonder if that's what it is. It's, oh no, het. That's what it is. A rod. Oh wait. I'm not sure. It's, no, it's not that. For some reason it might be, where was that document again? No, it would have to be capital XT to be that word, but it's probably a league. It's probably a river measure. So, but this is, I'm assuming this is probably Middle Egyptian? Oh wait, what does it say at the beginning? This is during the Old Kingdom, during the Middle and New Kingdom. And that's Ha. Oh no, this is numbers, sorry. So yeah, it's probably a league, which this says is about 220,000 cubits. So about 10.5 kilometers. It's pretty far. It might be slightly wrong. I wonder. But it definitely seems to be close. Though it's called a het, but that's Middle Egyptian, so this might be, or I don't know if this is in Middle Egyptian or in what language this is. Well, let's just look at, we'll look at our map. Amarna the place. Let's see if this one has a, let me just see if they say. Almost vast desert hemmed in for much of its perimeter by cliffs rising approximately 100 meters to a high desert. From the north headland to the south headland, both of which approach the is a distance of 10 kilometers. Eating all the bodies. Short cannibal show. Sorry, I'm just gonna see if this just gives like how many square miles the place is. There's a small scale. Can you give me a number? I can't. Okay. Hi, Beards. Welcome. Should have known that was you. We've kind of just wrapped up talking about the boundary stela. I'm trying to figure out how many square miles Amarna is, but I can't figure it out. I could Google it, but here's the whole town. So you can see here where the royal wadi is, and then the tomb. That's another. I think that might be what we talk about next time. Some of the other southern tombs. There's southern tombs, and then there are northern tombs as well. Ew. because they're partying. Okay. So let's go to the workman's village. I'm gonna close that. Duplicate. So let's talk about the workman's village. Because there's a lot of really cool stuff. My god. So, the workman's village. Is there a better picture in this? God, the Amarna Project's pictures need to be better. That's even a horrible picture. Actually, here we go. This is a great picture. Alright, so this is the workman's village. The workman's village is a slight exception to everything that we have talked about at Amarna itself. For two reasons. One, it is very highly planned, as you can see by this like giant square. And it's going to be the first thing that's going to be built in the area of Amarna. Because obviously, you need workmen to come and build the rest of your city. But the other exception to the kind of rule that's in Amarna is all surrounding this area are chapels and little temples and stuff. And these are all for non-Aten gods. Because again, these people were sent out potentially a couple years before it. Let's say Akhenaten, I think year 5 is around the time that he settles in Amarna. So potentially 5 years before, he has sent workmen down there and said, hey, build me this whole city. These people are not worshiping the Aten yet. These people barely even probably... Oh my god. Sorry, I'm having very bad acid reflux tonight. These people barely know about the Aten. And so they're just doing what they normally do. And they are building little chapels and other buildings outside of this workman's village and worshiping whoever they want to worship. And that's really fucking cool. And so let's read the Amarna Project page first. And then we will move on to some of the other stuff. So, it's also sometimes called the Eastern Village, is an isolated settlement tucked into a south-facing valley in the low plateau that runs westward from the cliffs and divides the eastern part of the Amarna Plain in two. It was partially excavated in 1921 and 1922 and saw further excavation between 1979 and 1986. It is a relatively sheltered location that has preserved many of its buildings to a greater height than in common elsewhere in Amarna, and its distance from the cultivation has improved the conditions under which organic material has been preserved. The isolation also means the complete archaeological print of the human community is preserved on the desert. This is literally so far out. Here it is. It is so far out from this that like certain parts, you can kind of see this line, certain parts along the river have now been like settled by modern places, but this is so far out that nobody's gonna settle in it. And so luckily that has kind of really helped preserve the space. So you can see here an aerial photograph of the workman's site. And you can see that perfect square as well as everything kind of surrounding it. And you can see these roadways pretty easily. Again, we're in the desert. Nothing really changes and moves. And here, these ancient roadways just vaguely go through all the area. So there's the map. So the main parts of the site is a walled village. In its final stage, the village proper contained within a plain brick wall, approximately a 69-meter square area. The major internal subdividing walls and joins in the brickwork imply the village was extended westwards during its life so that it rose up the flank of the western side of the valley. A total of 72 houses of similar design were built along a series of parallel streets. They preserved the remainings of furnishings and craft materials, especially those used in the manufacture of textiles. A larger house to the southeast corner was presumably for the official in charge. That later addition also contained one larger house. The village came to have a single narrow entrance. A separate one of the later addition was walled up. Just inside the gateway, a low rectangular pedestal could have been a shrine. I want to look at this picture because it's just higher quality. So you can see that it probably was extended, and there's like a big larger house in this section and probably a larger house. Actually, it looks like, yeah, see, this is it. This is the extra wall. So it was probably just this square, and then it was extended this way. And the larger house looks like it's down here in this area. The northern passage. So you can see the houses are all very, very similar. Some of them are not as well preserved, you can see. And then this led to the gates of the village. And there's a small shrine over here. So there's like a bigger house over here. And this is probably where they added on. It looks like this was a separate entrance, and then it was walled off as well. How big is each house? Let's see if they say. Here we go. Not that big. Looks like you get at least 2 or 3 rooms. Now this is really cool. So you can see the fallen roof and material and a wooden shutter to a window or cupboard. Let's see. What is there a scale on this? This is meters. See, this is so hard for me to... The whole thing is 69 meters. 1, 2, 3. It looks like four little magnifying glasses is one. Is what? Is 10 meters. 1, 2, 3, 4. It probably looks about 10 to 15 meters across. And like 1, 2, 3, and maybe 10 meters. Like one building is maybe 10 meters by 15 or something. That's a really rough estimation based off of this scale, but yeah, it looks like each building had at least, looks like 4 rooms. 4, yeah. Slightly different configurations depending on it, but they either had, it looks like they had 4 to maybe 5. I see a couple evidence of stairs that may have led to a second floor, but it also could have just led to a roof. Yeah. And remember, these are workmen that don't necessarily mean that they're coming with families. They might have very easily, but they don't necessarily have to if they're only suspected to come for a couple years before possibly getting an actual space in the actual city. It's kind of back and forth. Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, so there's a scale. But this is so cool. So you can actually see that the roof had caved in essentially at one point when it was abandoned. And there's actually pieces of wood that have been preserved. So here's a guy. This is reconstructed life in a house. So it's relatively small. But again, they're working a lot. So there is an outline of a painting of procession of figures of the god Bess in the wall of the front room of the house on Main Street. Oh wow, look at that. Grass roofing material and the debris in the house on Gate Street 11. Is Isn't that amazing? That got preserved. It's crazy. You got the little kitchen, all the little fires, another kitchen, and the walkway. So then outside of that walled structure, there's the area of pits and rubbish deposits to the south and east. The bricks for the village were largely made of clay dug from the desert floor. Several clay pits have been located, one large enough to be regarded as a quarry. They were convenient places for dumping ashy rubbish containing broken objects and organic debris from the village material, which also spread across the surface generally to the south and east. The Zir area. To the south of pits and rubbish is a flat area of desert that has been set aside where large pottery jars of the kind that Egyptian Arabic called Zir were kept in the open, held upright in heaps of stone mortared together. 2 brick courtyards accompanied them. The village appears not to have possessed a well of its own. The water table would have been at a considerable depth. Instead, the village was supplied with water from a well in the main city, brought out probably in pottery amphorae. The Zir would have been a place where the water was received and stored. It was needed for both human and animal population. So isn't that crazy? The city does not have a well. They do not have access to fresh water unless somebody from the city brings them water in amphora and then pours it into essentially big pots that are just kept open, that are mortared together like a makeshift well. Isn't that insane? That's crazy. So this is the Zir area. So yes, in Egypt, a lot of the amphora, which amphora is the wrong word because those amphora technically applies only to ones coming from like Greece usually. But yes, a lot of them would have been pointed at the bottom, and that is because they are set in sand. They are not meant to sit on an actual floor because most of the floors are not going to be actual floors. And so that pointed portion, actually, give me 2 seconds. I'll show you. I've never showed you guys this. This is my, quickly. This was my final, I think, for my second semester of pottery, is I made this. So it's not as pointed, and it does all the glaze like ended up as like a little nipple at the bottom. But it's not as pointed as like Egyptian ones would be, but this is entirely inspired by those. And I will admit my professor mostly made this. I did not really do much of this. And this obviously would either sit in sand or you would put it in another pot, which is why there is literally the glyph for the letter G, the sound that, for the phonetic G, the actual glyph is what is called a pot stand. It is a stand for a pot. So it's like literally that's how it would work, which is funny and strange, but that's how it worked. So I did make this. I will admit my professor did most of this. He helped me a lot, which was really nice. And it still has all of these bits because it didn't get finished in time, and this was used to make sure that it didn't stick, but then also the blue dripped into the inside of the yellow. But it's like one of my most proud pieces. Except I hand modeled. I made the bottom portion on a wheel, and then I hand modeled this, and then I came in the next day, and something had dropped and carved a giant section out of the lip of this, and I had to remodel it, and I was really pissed off. But it's like the prettiest glaze that we had, because a lot of the glazes we had were ugly because we were a college campus. We couldn't have anything that was poisonous, and a lot of the prettiest glazes are poisonous, which is unfortunate. Sorry, my music stopped. Why did my music stop? It just became quiet for some reason. Can you all hear the music? Why can y'all hear the music? I can't hear. This happened last time. Unless my earbuds died. No, I don't think they did. Let's see if it comes back. Come on. They may have died. That's why. Come on. It's not. It says it's connected, but it's not connected because I can't hear it through this. There we go. Okay. No, it would help it not fall over. It has nothing really to do with what's in it. It's literally. It sounds stupid. It sounds counterintuitive, and they did make things with flat bottoms, but essentially they were like, oh well, if you carve out the bottom and you make it just pointy, it can sit in sand better because. Not necessarily a flat surface can sit in sand. It's so weird, but it is just kind of how it is. The location is intentional in some sort of way. But it is odd that it's kind of really far out there, but it probably is out there for a couple of reasons. One, it's not that it might be that it is not undesirable, but like having somewhere where you're close to the actual quarries that can bring the stone out to the places, you're kind of in the middle. Essentially, they're not located in the actual city so that they would have to take the stones back and forth further, but they're not located all the way out where the stones are and stuff. And so this is like a mixture of kind of both of those, is that it can kind of be a location in between, but it's also its own like individual city in its way. All right. Other parts of this entire complex, there is Site X1. The natural route from the city follows a path that skirts the base of the plateau and approaches the village from the south. At the point where the path starts to round the hillside and the village comes into view, a line of stones has been laid across the desert, evidently to act as a boundary marker. At one end, a series of small rooms has been constructed on a terrace, perhaps a house point of inspection. Animal pens. The open ground south and east of the village supported a number of low buildings made from bricks and stones mortared to form walls. Their characteristic plan was a courtyard, one corner of which was separately enclosed with a curved wall. The doorways into these corner enclosures were narrow and flanked with slightly protruding walls that supported sticks of wood running along and just above the threshold, evidently to act as partial barrier. Stone troughs were another feature set in the outer courts. By their size, they seem only suited for penning animals. The surrounding and filling debris contain numerous stiff, dark bristles identified after expert examination as coming from pigs. Pig bones were numerous in the general refuse deposits as those of sheep or goat and cattle. The care shown in the making of these animal pens and the high water regiment for pigs emphasize how important the industry was to the villagers. Pig bones are fairly common in the city, but no trace has been found of specially constructed installations for them. Some different animal pens and such. And you can see, look at that. Isn't that amazing? The wood has been preserved. Wooden poles fixed across the entrance of one of the animal pens. Damn, it's so cool. And bristles! Belonging to pigs! Isn't that wild? All right, now here's the chapels. This is where it gets real interesting. Because everything else is like, this is a normal city. Like everything else, yeah, this is all the stuff that is normally in some place like this. But this is where it gets interesting, especially for the Amarna period. Generally, behind the animal pens, the villagers had also constructed many small chapels of bricks. The total seems to be about 23 chapels. Their rooms, which were roofed, were provided with benches as if for communal gatherings, and few had ovens and food remains. The sanctuaries of these chapels were brick benches, evidently for the support of images. The chapels were decorated with painted designs and scenes and with a certain amount of carved stonework. Mention of the Aten is notably absent. The Aten is not mentioned in these chapels. In its place were traditional designs and references to familiar deities. The initial explanation was that the chapels belonged to the short interval after the death of Akhenaten. The placement of the shrines, however, implies that they were integral to the village layout and belong within the reign of Akhenaten. 2 of the chapels had tombs attached, and a small cemetery existed on the hilltop behind. The chapels are likely, therefore, to have served as memorial cult to ancestors and was celebrated with family meals. But most of them are still dedicated to the gods that have been essentially forgotten during the Amarna period. And here you go, some pictures of these small little chapels. These are eerily similar to some of the chapels that I saw in in Deir al Medina, which Deir al Medina is extremely similar to this location, with the exception that Deir al Medina is a artist instead of mainly workmen. Like, these are workmen who are mainly building, not necessarily artists or not necessarily sculptors or designers. These are mainly like the workmen who are just like building the buildings and stuff. Deir al Medina is more an artist hub, artisans. But they are still, technically, there are workmen who are building the tombs and stuff for the Valley of the Kings, but it's still very similar. Like, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Wow. I would have loved to see that in completion. Reconstructed, though, you can see, so this is that depicts the face of a woman from the main chapel. But vulture paintings in the main chapel. And hey, man, that's Anubis. Wooden top to a police standard depicting a figure kneeling. Oh yeah, here you go. Little figure. I didn't see him. Figure kneeling beneath the image of the god Wepwawet. Oh, sorry, Wepwawet, not Anubis. Found in the sanctuary of the main chapel. That's the back of it. Yeah, he's a little skinny boy. No, Frankie. We're so far away from Christianity. This is them continuously worshiping the pharaonic gods. There's a lot of explanation that some people call Akhenaten the first monotheist, like because his dedication to one god is earlier. It predates, close, but it predates Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It predates a lot of those things, or it's very, very close to that date. But what he is worshiping is not monotheism. It's really not, because there are so many other gods like around. Like it's not the same. It's not the same as monotheism comes around. It's similar. It has a lot of similarities. I will admit that. It has a lot of similarities in that, like, we have like these prophets and he is like this middleman. He is like this Moses. Like, I think he has a lot of similarities to kind of those stories, but it's not the same thing. It's not really the same thing with a lot of that. It's really, yes, it is. He took that one god and put it on an insane pedestal and made himself the middleman, the only middleman that can talk to him. That's not really what other monotheistic, at least Christian, Islam, Judaism, that's not what monotheism is in that way. Like the God, like Yahweh, the God is the God of the people. Like it's not like that, because it often has nothing to, like those three religions, like it definitely differs between a couple of them, but like those three religions, like they don't have a king or a god being the only person who can talk to that god. It's not really the same thing. He's very similar to a prophet, but a prophet in other cases usually is God approaches that person, like, and he approaches a lot of people, and like tries to help them with their ways, and that's not what Akhenaten's doing. This might be the last one. Yes, the last part of the workman's village in general is the cemetery. And so, unfortunately, it says by the time that the first archaeologists worked at the village and the cemetery associated with it had already been robbed. None of the exhibitions have paid it much attention. It's mainly visible only through aerial photographs. We do know that the Amarna project has worked a lot on this cemetery and other cemeteries and found really, really cool things since then. And I'm surprised this page doesn't talk about it, but I know that they have, because this is in the area where they found the perfume cone. Unless that was in like the South Tombs area. No, because I didn't think that's what it was. But yeah, so that is the workman's village. Let's just see. So it's about 0.75 miles, 1.2 kilometers from the actual city. This says here, it's very making it parallel to the better studied Deir el-Medina. But it is really, really well preserved. It's also, yeah, very close to the South Tombs. I think that's what we'll probably talk about next time, is all the tombs, because I think we still have time that we'll talk about the Marowatan today. 70 square meters, surrounded by an outer wall 75 to 80 centimeters thick. It's pretty thick. So there's 72 houses of identical size. Oh, here we go. Each house was 5 meters, 16 feet wide, and about 10 meters long. So it's actually smaller than I estimated. So 33 feet long and about 10 meters wide. 10 by 5, 16 by 33 feet. Constructed of mud brick with some stone. Thresholds were often made from cut stone, but no stone walls were found. So you had 4 main rooms. You had the entrance hall, the living room, the bedroom, and the kitchen. Stairs, located either the front or the rear of the house, led up to a second floor. There probably had little windows, and a lot of them had some color or something, and images of Bes and Taweret. Again, these gods and goddesses that should technically not be worshipped now. Technically not. Oh my god, the earliest example of human fleas? What? That's gross. Finds for the house are consistent of everyday life: amulets, beads, fragments of matting, spindle whorls, rings, headrests, and pottery. The human fleas is a crazy thing. I did not know that. It's crazy. It contained no well, so everything had to be brought from the city. No, Tino, sadly I'm not. I'm dying to. I think we will aim for next year, not like 2025, but maybe 2026. I am hoping to actually go to an Egyptology conference in April, and then I'm hoping to go to TwitchCon in September. So I'm kind of leading up to that, and then maybe I can get to Egypt the next like January or February. Though there is a solar eclipse in Egypt coming up, and I'm also dying to go, because that would be really cool to watch a solar eclipse from Egypt. Hurghada, yeah. There's so many other places I want to go. I'm really tempted to see if I could go for a really short trip instead, just so I could go see the Grand Egyptian Museum. But I also am, while I'm tempted, I'm really waiting until it opens. I think I'm determined that no matter what, I'm not going to go back to Egypt until the full Grand Egyptian Museum is open, because I want to see the full Tutankhamun stuff. It's now half opened, almost half. It's more open than when I was just there, but I don't think it's economically the best thing for me to do until it's fully open, which I think makes sense for me. And I'm potentially working on group trips and stuff, and that's another thing that I'm working on slowly. That's a year 5 Melissa thing. We're in year 4. But year 5 MelissainDeNile is really going to kind of consider that and hopefully doing it, which would be great. Okay, so we're finished talking about the Workman's Village at Amarna. Okay. Oh, that's so weird. Based on the conspicuous absence of Amarna period royal name faience rings from... Oh, that's so weird. I have never heard about this before. So, Deir al-Medina is so similar, and I did forget that Deir al-Medina was around before the Amarna period. Just a little bit, but before the Amarna period. And it says that they, at least one individual, bore the same title as Deir al-Medina workers, which is the servants of the Palace of Truth. So it's what it's saying is, it's possible that the residents of the Amarna village were in fact the Deir al-Medina community transplanted to the new capital. This theory is based on the conspicuous absence of Amarna royal period royal name faience rings from the Deir al-Medina. It appears that the village was uninhabited during this period. That's very interesting, but I feel like, unfortunately, just because everyone really tried to get rid of the name of Akhenaten and the name of the Aten, that I don't doubt it's weird. It's not that weird to find no evidence of them, because potentially somebody had to come in and, like, collected them and destroyed them or something. When you say normal, what class of people are you talking about? Are you talking about the lower class, the middle class, the upper class? Lower class, probably not, because they probably couldn't afford it. Middle class, maybe. Upper class, probably, maybe. They're pretty popular, and the other potential is that they may have, especially if you're upper class or part of the court, you may have been gifted one. But you find a lot of them. There are a lot of rings with the name of pharaohs on them. Usually made out of kind of faience, which is a little bit cheaper, but yeah, let's actually read this about the chapel. So 23 chapels. Comparison of the chapels of Deir al-Medina to clarify the purpose of chapels in this village. They appear not to have been built as funerary chapels initially, but as places where divinities or family members could be worshipped, and as spaces where special meals could be prepared and eaten. Yeah. The main chapel, located at the southeast of the walled village, is the largest and best understood, having been protected from robbers by piles of spoil. Oh, we love this, but we also hate this. Is that essentially what it's saying is in the 1920s, after they did the excavation, they took all of the extra dirt and they put it into a giant pile, which we call a spoil heap. And luckily that spoil heap was right on top of this chapel. So nobody else, no robbers went to go looking for it, because it was protected by that, which is stupid but crazy. Had 2 entrances, a formal one to the east and another further to the south, which is probably for everyday use. The formal entrance seemed to have a pylon structure, with the southern entrance approached by a line of T-shaped basins set in the ground. The chapel had several annexes for cooking and for housing animals. It's most well known for its colorful paintings, which survive as fragments. The majority of the paintings have a yellow background, although some occurred on a white ground. Decoration for the sanctuary included 2 vultures grasping shen rings and feather fans, and a winged sun disk and bouquets, all likely from the east wall above the shrine doorways. The remains of striped cavetto cornices were also found. Long stem lotus flowers were also found, and again probably originated from the east wall, perhaps from the small pylons to the west. Boop, 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 doo. The decoration of the inner hall featured checkered and looped lotus friezes, semicircular garlands, male and female figures, and hieroglyphs. Paintings from the north wall are the best preserved. The faces are painted in the conventional Theban style and do not show any of the distortions associated with the Amarna period art style. However, this is not unique to the main chapel, as conventional offering scenes in the conventional style are found in the innermost parts of the tomb of Huya, Peshe, and Ani. And these are tombs that are very close to the time period of this, but still have the traditional Theban art style. But it also indicates that this could have been built during the reign of Akhenaten, but before Akhenaten may have moved over. And essentially, it just shows that, like, nobody was really coming out and policing these people. Like, no one's coming out and saying, hey, why aren't you talking about the Aten out here? Like, somebody didn't obviously care about the people that were living out here. And that's why I really want to talk about Amarna more, because I feel like people think that you were going to be punished if you didn't worship the Aten, and that's just not true. That's, like, not true. That's just how it is that obviously it seems like they still were able to make more of this and do this. The main chapel was likely built to commemorate a man named Senefer, whose name appears over the head of a male figure based on the fragmentary hieroglyphic inscriptions may have been a scribe. Let me just read this. During Akhenaten's reign, the god Aten was elevated above all others. The worship of other gods was suppressed and their temples were closed. Amun received the harshest treatment, with his name eventually being hacked out where it occurred. Akhenaten's devotion to the Aten culminated with his reforms of Egyptian religion in the cult of the royal family, who are the sole intermediaries between the populace and the Aten, and the founding of the city of Akhetaten. It appears that the general population continued their traditional worship of household gods like Bes and Taweret, with amulets of both and a stela of Taweret being found in the city itself. To this end, it is interesting to note that the name of Amun appears in painted fragments in the main chapel and another, chapel 529. The fragments from the main chapel are in the Hatshepsut Nisu format and call Amun the good ruler, eternally Lord of Heaven, who made the whole earth. Additionally, a wooden top for a military standard depicting Wepwawet was found in the sanctuary. That's the image that we saw. In Chapel 525, two stela were found. The smaller of the two depict the god Shed, who is called the Great God, the Lord of the Two Lands, while the larger one addresses the funerary prayers to Shed and the goddess Isis in the addition to the Aten. This larger stela is inscribed for a man named Ptah Mai, who is the praised one of the living Aten, and his family. Pete and Willie suggest the worship of the traditional gods continued throughout the reign of Akhenaten, and that the distance separating the workman's village from the main city afforded it more freedom in this regard. They also interpreted the presence of the name of Amun as an indication that the decoration dates to the early reign of Tutankhamun, where orthodoxy was returned. More recently, Weatherhead and Kemp suggest that the use of the traditional art style instead of the court style in the depiction or in the decoration of the chapels indicates a separation between public life, with its displays of loyalty to the king, and private life, where the expressions of grief and commemoration remain largely unchanged and traditional. This is taken to indicate that the Aten cult and iconography had limited penetration into the lives of the general populace. That is essentially what I tried to prove with my senior thesis when I wrote this, and I looked at all of them and I mapped where all the different pieces were found. And quite a few of them are found in the workman's village, but so many more are honestly found in other parts of the city. So, anything else? Those are the same pictures. Yeah, there's the residence. Oh, look at that. That's a cool picture. So this is an archaeological drawing of the house, and these are all the feature numbers, and you can see the different coloring telling you what material it's made out of. So there's some sort of feature here with lots of different features. And then you come into this room. And there's the staircase. I wonder if this is the kitchen or not. It's a really cool image. Oh, here we go. Oh, is that a little butt? I think it's a little butt. I think it's the lady changing. So you walk in and there's like a bench and there's a sleeping platform. The bedrooms are always quite small in these houses. And then the stairs potentially to an upstairs room, but they had much more of like a living space. And a hearth. I don't know what a kern is. What is a kern? Oh, a simple hand mill for grinding grain. Or 2 circular stones. So it's a place where they could make grain. So that's probably what you would consider the kitchen. I love how that's not the page. Oh, I zoomed in on it. That's why. Okay. That's it. Alright, let's look at the Maruatan. This is an interesting place. I want to see what Wikipedia says. Let's close all this. Ugh. Okay. It's getting hot in here. So I will not take out any of my clothes. Alright, so the last thing we're going to talk about today is the Maruatan. This is a very strange building. It has been fully excavated, and unfortunately, after it was fully excavated, it was completely built over. So it is unfortunately, like, we got what we got, which kind of sucks. I don't know if it's built over, but it is now under cultivation or something. It is inaccessible now. Thank you for all the likes on TikTok Live. So, Maruatan is the name of an ancient building that stood in the desert to the south of the main city. Actually, I'll show you where it is on the map here. It's very south. It's kind of all the way down here, while everything else is mostly up here. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't really make any sense why it's so south. Granted, there is a lot of modern day cultivation, so who knows, there could have been more around that area, but there seems to be a distinct disconnect where there is nothing in between the two of them. So here you have aerial site of the Maruatan in 1932. So it consisted of twin enclosures surrounded by buttressed brick walls, one of the enclosures larger than the other. Both enclosures seem to have been largely given over to shallow pools or lakes and to gardens planted with trees, with small pavilions of various kinds set around the edges, some of the brick and some of stone. A long narrow stone causeway and pier with a decorated kiosk at the end projected out into a larger lake. And that is probably closer to the river where all these palm trees are. So here we got some pictures of the excavation. Unfortunately, because like it's not in good condition, the walls are so short, so it's really hard to imagine what the place might have looked like at first. My headphones died. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry, my headphones died. Which was gonna happen eventually. Where the heck is the charging port? There it is. Okay. Now they're charging. Sorry. Hopefully everyone on TikTok can hear me. Can you hear me? Yes, I think you can hear me. Okay. Okay. So God, now my voice sounds really loud because I had my headphones on. So, the most distinctive part to have survived in the northeast corner of the larger is the northeast corner of the larger enclosure. A square artificial island surrounded by a ditch supported a stone platform. Behind it and occupying the corner of the enclosure was a long pillared construction that shaded a series of interlocking T-shaped water basins. These were surrounded by a gypsum pavement painted with designs from nature divided into panels. Fragments of carved stone from the buildings also celebrate nature through the use of plant motifs. So you can see here these T-shaped water basins. Lots of beautiful flowers, lotus with birds. You can see these beautiful, this is an enormous image, but these beautiful columns with then probably Akhenaten and Nefertiti worshipping the Aten. The inscribed stonework preserved the name of the palace as Maru Aten, identified it as an example of a solar temple or sunshade, and recorded the name of Akhenaten's eldest daughter and heiress, Merit Aten. Her name had, however, been carved over an earlier female royal name. At first, this was thought to have been Nefertiti. It is generally concluded now that the original name was that of Kia, and it says earlier, I believe it is another queen of Akhenaten. Not the great royal wife, who was Nefertiti, but another wife of Akhenaten. And then supposedly that Kia has been theorized as Tutankhamun's mother, but I don't think we have any proof of that, unfortunately, because she would have then titles of king's mother and lots of other things. So it is unclear if she is Tut's mom, or if Tut's mom is a third unknown woman. Because I'm pretty sure these are the only two names. I think we know one other name of like a foreign royal wife of Akhenaten, but I think those are the only two names of the royal wives that we know. So fragments of red granite stela showing Akhenaten adoring the Aten. The hieroglyphic text records the name of the palace as the sunshade of the king's daughter Merit Aten in Maru Aten in Akhenaten. But her name, I'm trying to see, her name replaces another name. So there we got Akhenaten, and then we have a woman here. Maru Aten, in both its design and its name, reflects the search for tranquility to be found in sunlit gardens where shrines add a spiritual presence. Maru Aten was wholly destroyed in the 1960s and 1970s when a huge government irrigation scheme was laid out in the north and east of El Hatwa. The last traces of Maru Aten, photographed in 1978, in the foreground are the remains of the 1922 spoil heaps that ran along the outside of the enclosure wall of the east. So again, unfortunately, it is not well preserved. But there are a couple other theories, and I'm hoping this article will tell a little bit more about it. It is also short for Pa Maru and Pa Aten, the viewing place of the Aten. Excavated in 1896 and then more fully in 1921. And this is the whole complex. Those are those T-shaped. So we got, what is it? We got number 1 is the Sun Temple. Number 2 is a sun chapel and 2 pavilions on an artificial island. Number 3 are some flower beds. Number 4 is these T-shaped water tanks. Then number 5 is a small palace. Number 6 is a quay. There are other houses, number 7, and then there is a bigger entrance hall over here, and there's more houses over here. Okay, they don't tell me more about it. Okay, let me see. Oh, actually, can we go and look at the actual book? Yes. Is this in English? Yes. Main city site, domestic architecture, Eastern Village, tombstone, Maru Aten, 109. So this is the actual excavation of... This is the actual excavation report. And actually that included, do you see it's saying chapels? These are all recorded. This is the workman's village as well. All right, Marwat in the precinct of the Southern Pool. I'm hoping this is going to have what I want to talk about in here because it is a little weird. There are no archaeological grounds for connecting the name of the potsherd with the ruins. Yeah, it was called. So here's the thing. So this is a. It seems to be that this is a slightly outdated theory. There was a large theory that this was a harem, that this was a place where women could stay, and could be for the pharaoh, for others, who knows. Mayor of Canada, there is literally a video game called Carbon, what is it called? It's called C14 Dating, and it is a dating sim of a girl on an archaeological dig in Belgium, where we can end up with many or more romances. And I have played it for at least 2 Valentine's Days, and we have failed miserably to get a boyfriend. So it is a great joke that I hear often. And it is also probably the most accurate depiction of actual archaeology that I have seen in a video game is in it. And so much so that it is boring, which is crazy. That's another crazy part about it. I highly recommend the game, even though I find it completely impossible because I have not yet to beat it. But it is the most accurate archaeology game I've ever had. Okay, I'm so thirsty. My throat's starting to hurt. Just beat it. Beat it. So we are talking about the Maru Aten, or the precinct of the Southern Pool, which is an area south of Amarna. This building that is very mysterious and doesn't make a lot of sense. And the one thing about this is that it seems like for a while it was known as a harem or some sort of place like this. And it seems here that it's like, what exactly this means and why it should and granted, this is an old text, so ignore a lot of how it's written. But oh god, this thing is too low. What exactly this means and why it should describe the particular collection of buildings which we found is not very clear, and it appears desirable to select a name rather more applicable to the character of the place. The discovery on one of the wine jars from the harem of the phrase the Southern Pool, used as a proper name, gave us just what we wanted to describe a place lying right at the south of the Amarna plain and possessing as its most striking feature a large artificial lake. There are no archaeological grounds for connecting the name on the potsherd with the ruins, but its suitably was too obvious to be passed over, and we were quickly to adopt it as a label while keeping the more correct word precinct to define a complex for which it is difficult to find any other noun sufficient non-committal. So as you can see, they pretty much see something and they're like, we're just gonna call it this because that's what we think it is. So what I want to talk about is I want to see how this is laid out because I think I did read this before. Oh, wait a second. Go back. All along the west wall lay a row of small houses which can only be those of work people employed on the precinct. Those to the north were constructed with a solidity usually in houses of the type, while on the contrary to those those to the south were, judging from the scanty ruins of them that survive, more than usually flimsy. The northern houses of the road differed from the workmen's dwelling on our valley side, and also from those found by the German excavators of the main city, by having alongside of each a narrow yard with outbuildings. In 2 of these we found dead cows, and another room there were 9 dead dogs. Well, that's gotta get added to my corpus. This one is considerably closer to the river. Where's the image? And it also, it definitely has a water source because it has 2 massive pools of some sort. Granted, it could have absolutely been added. Sorry, I'm looking for this image. So the Maroatan is right here. It's very close to the river in comparison to the workman's village. But yeah, it's not necessarily an oasis because it's far away. But yeah, the 9 dead dogs is very interesting. Now the thing I'm looking for, I don't know if I'm gonna find it in here actually. This is the entrance hall, the south garden. It's the garden, the quay. Unfortunately, what I am looking for is that very strangely there was a burial. I might have to pull up my thesis to find it. The water court. I'm just not sure if they're going to talk about it or if I have to search for it. Pull up my thesis. Here we go. This is gonna be really bad. I'm gonna read my paper, but I wrote this so long ago, but let's just see. Like the workman's village, there are certain areas of the city that contain very few objects but are relevant when questioning the strength of Akhenaten's religious power over the people. First, Maroatan is one of the most southern parts of the city and consists of 2 enclosure walls with large water basins and artificial islands. A pendant of Bes was found in a child's tomb in the harem building of that complex, which was not labeled on any maps. Though the harem can be assumed to have been found in the residential type buildings in the northern side section of the complex. The body was found with toy jars of alabaster beads and the amulet. Pendlebury, is that what I'm reading? Am I reading Pendlebury? No, I am not reading Pendlebury. I'll have to look up what Pendlebury is. The child was found in the cellar that had been bricked off and then a large stone rolled in front of it. There was no indication of why the room was put out of use or why the infant would have been buried there and not the cemeteries at the edge of the city. And that's all I have. And that is why this place has been so interesting to me, is because of this poor little burial of a child. And I wonder, I gotta see if maybe it is in here. Because I think I can usually search this. What did it say it was? It was a Bes amulet? Let me see if I can search Bes. If it is unfortunately a child's skeleton, it is usually very hard to tell. So if I did not write it in that paper, we probably do not know. All right. See, it doesn't look like, unfortunately. Like it's anywhere mentioned in this, so it might be from yeah, I don't think it must not be in this book. Let me see what Pendlebury, because I probably have it. We'll see what Pendlebury is. So I probably have it in my collection of documents. Sources. Oh, it could be a book, unfortunately. It might be, unfortunately, in a book. Yeah, I think it actually is. I think the City of Akhenaten, Volume 1 and Volume 2. I don't think I have that. But yeah, that has intrigued me so much. Let me just see. Pendlebury, City of Oh, hell yeah. This is volume 3? Central City. I need, okay. 3 plates. Maybe that's the one? I didn't see which one it was, the one I was talking about. 1951, page 117. Okay, Melissa, your citation is wrong, Melissa. I wrote 1971, it's 1951, and I didn't even say which volume. Melissa! Northern suburb in the desert. Oh, that's not the one I want. Poop. Poop! What is it called? It's called the City of Akhenaten. Melissa, as a child, is not doing well. Is that part 1? Does that say part 1? Part 1! There we go. Let's go. Let's try this one. Limited preview. Why would you do this to me? No. No. It teased me. Is this the right one? Log in and borrow. Limited root. This is bullcrap. See, these are like, unfortunately, these are the old ass books that I want. Like, all the books that I buy that are all behind me, they're all so new and they're all boring because I want the old books. I mean, did this one, it could be this one. Does this have limited preview? No, it doesn't. But I think that the area, I think it's definitely a 1. Yeah, because this, what did it say at the beginning? It said the northern suburb and the desert altars. That's not the right one. Dang it! Dang it! I want number 1. Wonder if I could find it on wonder if I still have that link. There's a weird Russian website that I used to use in college that had a lot of weird Egyptology books, and I wonder if it's still here. It's somewhere in my... Don't look at this. Don't look at this. It's somewhere in here. I gotta go through these and delete a lot of these things, but I know it was in here somewhere. So old. I wish I could see when like the date, because if I could find it and I knew it was like 2017, I could say, oh yeah, that's it. And oh, the French dog website. Oh my god. We're gonna look at that later. If it still works. No, didn't work. The French dog website was an amazing website. Oh, is this it? I think this is it. Oh, I found it. I don't know if they'll actually have it, but they might. Oh no, that's only 3. Is that 2? Oh shit. Oh my god, look at all these documents. Wait a second. I want all of these. Wait a second. This is like a whole collection of... I have Busy Lives at Amarna. Some of these are more recent, but this is some really weird... I don't know who gave me this, but somebody told me about this so long ago. I can't believe the website is still in existence. But it was just all... Like, you could just search in here and you could try to see if you could find... Although, shit, this is 2024. It's still being updated. That's actually wild. That's part... Oh, that's part 2. Come on. What? Why is it just sending me there? Oh, not available. Yeah, I think the other thing is that a lot of these links could be really bad. Yeah, this is what I want. I want part 2. I want part 1 actually, never mind. But yeah, it's very weird and it's very interesting, and I really want to know more about it and how just like strange it is almost that this place is just like vague and odd. I'm just checking a couple things that are not labeled correctly that I might have taken some really bad photos of some articles. Because I did this. I absolutely did this. Oh my god, is this it? Wait a second. I found it! I think this is it. I am such a horrible human being. I think this is literally, I just took pictures of the pages. This is it. This is City of Akhenaten. Oh god. This is literally it. There's only 37 pages though, so I don't think... I don't think I'm gonna get to the page that I want. I think this is just the beginning. Oh, wait, no. 117, that was the page. I love past Melissa. This is Melissa. Picture this. This is Melissa, who is currently interning at the Brooklyn Museum. And my university library had literally nothing on Egypt. And so the Brooklyn Museum library was closed at the time because it was on a floor that was being renovated before being opened back to the public. And so I could only get in there. I would essentially come on my days that I wasn't an intern, and I would flash my badge at the front door pretending like I was going to work, and I would go into the library and I would start pulling all of these books, and I would pretend that I'm working. And then I needed all of these books because they had a book that had all of the maps of Amarna, of all the excavations, and I put them all out on a big table in the library, and I stood up on the table and I took photos. This is like batshit crazy, Melissa. And so this is literally me. They actually did have a very fancy machine where you could put your computer in and you could take pictures of the books, but I'm pretty sure this is with my phone. So yeah, 117 was the page that we were looking for. So here we go. The door of the cellar immediately to the right of the entrance to the back court had been walled up with brick, and as if for greater security, a big slab of stone had been set against the face of the blocking wall. The opposite cellar seemed to have been similarly closed, for though the brickwork in its doorway had been destroyed, a stone slab corresponding to that on the south stood tilted forward just in front of the door, and had almost certainly once served to seal it. There was nothing to show why these two cellars had been put out of use, whether they had contained treasure or whether, as we fondly hoped, this was some drama of the harem, unless it was that in the northern chamber there was found against the eastern wall the body of an infant, roughly buried there with its toy pots of alabaster, its beads and amulets. About the original contents of the other two chambers on the north side of the back court, there was, however, no doubt at all. Their floors were covered with broken wine jars and mud jar ceilings, showing that here were two of those well-stocked cellars that figured in the tomb drawings of the royal palace. From these two little rooms and from the northeast corner of the court into which the fragments had overflowed, we recovered over 280 stamped ceilings and 130 graffiti. The ceilings all bore the label as wine of the house of Akhenaten, wine of the temple, the mansion array of Setep-her array of wine of the western river of the southern pool, the storehouse of tribute. It is tempting to see either of the last two titles allusions to the actual ruins with which we have to deal, but it is by no means permissible to do so. The graffiti gives the unusual supplementary details about the jar's contents, the vineyard, the name of the vineyard superintendent, the vintage date, etc. Very good wine. They were certainly no dry entertainments that Akhenaten gave in the precinct of the southern pool. But again, remember this, it now appears that this is not the case, but this is the problem, is that I read this was all I read about the Marwan. So my only perception of the Marwan was this really, really old book. This really old book, well actually, wait a second, this is not that old, this is 70s. Is that what it was? Wait a second. Go back here. No, 1920s. Yeah, this is 1921. So it's 1920s. So unfortunately, the viewpoint in here is that this was a harem. It now appears, especially looking at like what the Amarna project talks about it, is that it is not meant to be a harem. It is meant to be a place of, another place of worship, but it's also still very vague and such. But it could be essentially like a ceremonial stream, like a sacred lake. It could be a sacred lake, which are very common in other places, like the Temple of Karnak has a sacred lake. So this could be just a different version of a sacred lake that's kind of off the distance. But yeah, it so intrigued me. So this is what I've discovered. The reason that these pages are not in order is because I looked up in the back of these books the gods that I was looking for, Bes, Taweret, and Hathor. And I took pictures of each page depending if they had that mentioned. And so this one, which actually surprisingly it doesn't say, but it also 22-216 I think means that's a picture. Well, here you have some of the amulets here you can see, and there's some Bes as well. That's 20. I'm trying to figure out why I took. Oh, there's Hathor. So there's a Hathor head on that. Yeah, so this was another piece that this little stela with Taweret, this was a really important part of it. But yeah, I don't know what that 22-216 means. And this is the Maruatan. If I had the actual book, I'd probably be able to figure out actually where they're talking about. Especially because they're two identical sellers that were both boarded up. I know, isn't that fish cool? Where'd the fish go? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful fish. It actually is probably glass, which means it's probably not even Egyptian. It probably means it's being imported. Oh, I remember this. See, somebody had wrote in Brooklyn Museum, because this is actually at the Brooklyn Museum. What page is this? Oh, there's the bowl. That's why I took a picture of this. I'm now really wondering what that number is. $22,216. I don't know what that means. Yes. Not a university library, a museum library. I did not steal under false pretenses. I just wasn't actually going to my internship. I was just going to take pictures of books, apparently. But this is crazy. I didn't realize this was what it was because it just says COA Part 1. But it's City of Akhenaten is literally the name of it. I've shown you guys this before, but I'll show you the images of the actual maps that I took. Survey. Or, no. How did I do this? I can't even remember. So yeah, I think I scanned this. This is called the Survey of Amarna. And this was the book that I needed desperately. And so I think I took this to the really nice scanner. And I think did I scan the whole book? Yeah, it's 92 pages. I think I scanned the whole book. Because this was my problem, is that like I couldn't sit there and read it. I didn't have time. And so I would just go. It wasn't really false pretenses. I had permission. I had an ID. I was allowed to do that. But then this was the more difficult part. Yeah, so this is where you can see these are huge. These are genuinely massive maps that I had to unfold. It's like, I'm telling you, this is as large as like a dining room table. Because they're so detailed. And so I took them out, and so like this is only, essentially what I did was I took one photo of the massive one, like as big as I could get, and then I took close-up shots of like I think I did 3 sections to try to get as accurate as I could. But these maps are amazing, and I'm very grateful that so remember when I've told you guys that like when I was younger, when I was doing this, I emailed Barry Kemp. This is why, because I emailed him to see if there was a digital version of these maps, and he essentially told me no. And that's what he told me, and I was very grateful for him. But I was grateful for him answering. Yeah, you can see unfinished tombs. There's so many tiny details in these maps that are just like so amazing. Because this was a genuine huge project for them to undertake, is to do this entire thing. And you can see here where unfortunately the modern settlement has covered up this area. And then there's the riverbank. But like this is the North City in comparison. So yeah, we'll talk about this. We can go through all these parts of the city if you want to. Or we can at least go through like the main temple and the palace. I can do a poll to see if y'all want to go through these more in detail. I want to definitely talk about the tombs, like that'll probably be the next discussion stream we do. But we can absolutely go into those cities, and we can do exactly what we did, where we just read what it's on the Amarna project website and talk about the differences and stuff. Because I'm cool with moving on to finding some other stuff to talk about, but believe me, I could talk about this place forever. So this is what the actual survey maps look like, and then what I did with them. Oh yeah, is this it? I think this is it. So what I did with them, these are zoomed in versions. But what I did was I took each section and I looked at where all these objects are found. So where these are all objects showing different gods and goddesses than the Aten. I did, I think, in a small scale, I also did how many Aten items are found. And to be honest, Aten does not come up. Aten is really only talked about in like actual like texts. The people of the city aren't really wearing like Aten, his name on like necklaces or rings or things like that. Could the birth of the place indicate its function? Like why it was there? What do you mean the birth of the place? But you can see here that I got very specific about where these objects were found, because all of these little buildings are numbered. It's O dot a number and then dot something. And I got very specific, and it's because of this grid. So like O49. Oh shit, that's the number. That number that's in the thing. Oh, records of its creation? I mean, yes, it could, but we don't have them. We have the general context of why the entire place was built, but we don't have any records for that place, and why it was built. In general, we don't have those records. The Amarna letters are great sources, but they are not really they're probably the best preserved any sort of textual sources, and the boundary stela, but everything else was really, really destroyed. So if we had anything, it is gone. So yes, the records are sparse when it comes to Egypt. Like, you don't think they are, because in comparison to other cultures, other ancient cultures, like Mesopotamia does have a lot, but like other things, it's much more sparse than I think you think. But in comparison to like Greece and Rome, we are sucking, like in comparison. We're in the kind of middle ground with Egypt. But yeah, you can see here every single one of these little dots is an item that was found. I don't remember what the M's stand for. But so this is probably the southern city. Oh, and they are color coded. Blue is for one god, black is for another god, and pink is for another god. So they are all... And some of them are more specific than others. Like these ones are obviously like a good amount of these pieces, but they don't have the exact number. This is the number. I forgot about that. But God, I worked so hard on this. And this area is crazy. This is somewhere over here is the sculptors. I think somewhere over here is the sculptors area. But this is very much artisans. This is why there's a huge cluster of these things, because they're actually making the molds and stuff. Yeah. And like this place had, look how many it had. Which is so interesting. And then somewhere here is the palace. So this shows that this is in the northern city. 2 items, or actually a couple items were found up here in like the northern city. And then when you look at the palace, which the king's house is here. Nothing found in the king's house, but there is one thing up here found in the barracks. It's Hathor. And then there was one thing found up here, which was Bess. And then down here in the actual, like an attachment into the thing, there were 2 Bess items found, which is very interesting. The main temple is here, but this is kind of an attachment to it, which was very cool. And then this also gives the workman's village. And there were not very many. There were not as many as you would think it would be. Aten papyrus inscription found between chapels 523 and 524. Wine jar in chapel 521. So yeah, that's not on the map, I think. Oh, maybe that is. Rotate. Oh no, this is, where is this? This is something else. This is actually not even, this is like the cemetery? Is this South Cemetery maybe? But there's a lot found. Here, interesting. Oh, this is the Stone Village. I forgot about the Stone Village. It's not as well documented as the Workman's Village, but this is the Stone Village, which is a little bit further away and is also similar to the Workers' Village, is a place where people were probably getting all the living to get all the stones and such to build everything. I wanted to see if my percentages are in here somewhere. Because I know I have them on my Excel spreadsheet, but I did not want to. Also, the way that this is so eerily similar to my graduate thesis is a little bit jaw-dropping. Here we go. Oh yeah, here's the Stone Village. So the Stone Village is actually further out into everything. There's a lot of the objects. Okay, I think I needed that chart. So there were, how many objects did I find? 193 objects were recovered from Amarna and analyzed for this research that depicts gods of the Egyptian pantheon. Bess is depicted on 115 of these artifacts, Hathor on 40, and Taweret on 30. Most of these you can see are pendants or amulets, but then there's also bezel rings, there's vessels, there's a trial piece, a mold, there's quite a few molds, and quite a few figurines and statuettes, and then there's one necklace, one ritual item or model, 2 decorative elements, 1 architectural element, and 1 stela. I could put this on my Patreon. That's a thing I didn't think about. My master's thesis is on my website. You can read my master's thesis there. My senior thesis, which is this, is not up anywhere. This is just mine. I could technically put it up. I might do a podcast about it. I might read this out if anybody is curious. And then this is where it gets very interesting, like where all the pieces are found. They're mostly found in the main city and the north suburb, but there are also quite a few in the central city, a couple in the workman's village, many in the stone village, one in the Maruwatan North Palace and the North City. Yeah, the stone village is definitely close to a quarry for sure. Absolutely. But yeah, this is where I broke down all the different... This looks way better than I thought it was. I thought it was going to look kind of crappy. Who knows? Maybe I'll put this out. But any last questions about Amarna, about the Amarna, about the sites that we were looking at?